Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT04 and taking a look at all of the new and interesting green tools that we got to work with, because we also got new starter decks to accompany all of the new green cards for BT04. So I am going into this deck profile with the assumption that you at least got 1 to 2 copies of the starter deck, preferably 2, so that way you have a playset of all of the cards from the starter deck. But I digress, and all of the new green cards that we got are definitely looking to be really powerful, and you could definitely make some really solid decks with them, and you could take it in a whole bunch of different directions. But for today, I am just going to be doubling down and focusing on the HerculesKabuterimon from the new starter deck, just because I think this card is absolutely fantastic as a really good budget boss monster, and I think that he is just overall a really good card in general, just because of everything that he's doing and everything that the set has to support what he is doing. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Argomon. So Argomon is still just a really good Digitama to be using, just because he has this nice inheritable ability of during your turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your unsuspend phase, then you get to gain 1 memory. So green's hit to hidden potential discovered. It does mean it is a little bit less memory efficient than it used to be, but green is still an insanely memory efficient color to begin with. So having Argomon to help make your memory even more efficient is always just a really good thing to have, considering it is very easy to catch your Digimon in a rested state, whether they're attacking the opponent's Digimon, they're attacking the security, or you're using still a little bit of Digisorption. There's just a whole ways to catch your Digimon rested, and going into your next turn, they'll just become active, and then you'll gain that additional memory, starting your turn with even more power and possibility. But as the main Digitama of the deck, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Minomon. The Digitama slot as a whole just doesn't really matter as much in this style of deck, but it's still nice to have Minomon as the main Digitama, just because he has this nice inheritable ability of when attacking, if you're attacking one of the opponent's Digimon, then this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP for the turn. So this is just a really good generic way of DP boosting your Digimon, because the majority of the time you're going to try to attack into the opponent's Digimon to delete them, so that way you could trigger the big piercing keyword ability to also deal security damage to them at the same time, and you want your Digimon to be as powerful as they possibly can when attacking into the opponent's Digimon to make sure that they could clear it, or whether they're already strong enough and you just want them to be stronger for the security check, it's still just a very good ability to have. But if you just wanted to run Modimon instead, because the majority of the time you are only going to be attacking with your level 6s, that's totally fine. It doesn't really matter. It's just the whole point is this slot you need your Digimon to be DP boosting. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Terriermon. So Terriermon is still just a really fantastic Digimon to be playing around with, because he has this really powerful ability where during all turns, your opponent can't gain memory except by tamer effects. So we know in BT04 there's a ton of new ways to play around with and manipulate the memory, so Terriermon, to continue the trend of just trying to turn off all of their memory manipulating shenanigans, is really good, because we know that purple, yellow, and blue are going to be the 3 prominent colors that are going to be manipulating the memory the most with their Digimon, and not necessarily their tamers, all depending on the matchup in the deck that they're using. But we also know that green can also manipulate the memory, and so can all of the other colors in some way, shape, or form. So just having a good way to just limit their actions is always a good thing, and it's never a bad thing to think about using. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Lillymon. So Lillymon is just a really fantastic Digimon from BT04, just because what this card is doing is synergizing with HerculesKabuterimon and the Digiburst mechanic as a whole. So what this card is doing is she has the nice inheritable ability where during your turn, when this card is trashed due to the activation of a Digiburst ability, then you get to return this card to your hand instead. So this is really good just because it is a way to consistently reuse your level 3s, because if you just build up a Herc with Lillymon underneath, she is the perfect fodder to use for Herc's Digiburst ability, because she'll be coming back to our hand, and that is just really good, so we can consistently try to make as many powerful plays as we possibly can to apply as much pressure as we possibly can. So Lillymon, just being a reusable level 3, just makes her really good for the deck as a whole. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Tentomon. So this is the new Tentomon from the starter deck, and this Tentomon is all that green could have ever hoped for. So what this card is doing is it has the nice on-play ability of you get to look at the top card of your deck, and then if it's a green Digimon, you get to add it to your hand. Otherwise, you get to place it to the bottom of your deck. So 9 out of 10 times, this is basically a Gabumon, except it's in green and it has 1000 more DP, and it's just looking to be a really powerful card to be utilizing, just because green hasn't really had the best ways of drawing cards, and now that they have Tentomon to essentially draw you a card 9 out of 10 times, it just means that green can finally start playing a little bit more on par card draw wise to just be as consistent as it possibly can be. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Palmon. So this version of Palmon is also from the green starter deck. So what this card is doing is she gives the ability of when attacking, where if you're attacking one of your opponent's Digimon, then this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP for the turn. So Palmon is just another fantastic card to just continue to DP boost our Digimon to make them as powerful as we possibly can. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Vegiemon. So Vegiemon could be Roachmon if you really feel like it. It doesn't really matter. They're kind of fulfilling the same type of role. It's just for this style of deck, I prefer Vegiemon just because he has a low Evo cost. So green, you could just max out on the Evo cost of 1s, so that way you're more tempo efficient than a lot of the other colors, and you can consistently go up to your higher levels that much faster. And then on top of which, he has a play cost of 4. Roachmon has a play cost of 3, but Roachmon only has 3000 DP, where Vegiemon has 6000 DP. So at the very least, if we need to just hard play Vegiemon and start swinging, we could do that as well. And if we need to just Digivolve and start swinging that way, we could just do that as well too. So Vegiemon is a more aggressive card than Roachmon, and that's kind of why I'm using Vegiemon, but the cards are interchangeable, and it's just trying to fulfill that tempo slot where we just need something that could cover as many bases as we possibly can in terms of ways that we could utilize the card. But we also don't care about the fact that it's a vanilla because it makes for a great Digiburst target, so that way we could get rid of this card first because it's not doing anything in the inheritables, so having a vanilla is still just really good to have in the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Stingmon. So Stingmon is another level 4 that evos for 1, so it's really fantastic on tempo and efficiency. It does hard play for 6, but again, 9 out of 10 times, we're just going to be evoing for 1. And what he's doing is he has this really nice inheritable ability where during your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon by battle and survives, then you get to gain 1 memory. So this is just really good because it is, again, manipulating the memory, so that way we could be more memory efficient than the opponent, and we could utilize that memory to make even more powerful or aggressive plays possible. So Stingmon is looking to be a really fantastic Digimon to be using, especially since we're going to be playing around with the piercing ability, so we always want to try to attack into the opponent's Digimon whenever we possibly can. So that way we could try to trigger this ability as consistently as we possibly can. But if you really don't feel like you wanted to run Stingmon, then you could just run the good old classic Kabuterimon in its place, and it doesn't really matter just because they are fulfilling a very similar role where you're just trying to gain some sort of benefit to attack into the opponent's Digimon. Whether it's DP boosting or memory doesn't really matter, just because everything is just super good in green, and green has just so many good flexible tools that you could think about utilizing. But for this style of deck, I just prefer gaining the memory, so that way we can make more powerful plays possible. Because we already have so many good ways of DP boosting our Digimon, I just felt like it wasn't exactly needed. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of the new Kabuterimon from the starter deck. So what this card is doing is that this card is another level 4 that evos for 1, so it's already really tempo efficient like everything else. And then on top of that, he is fulfilling the deck's dedicated blocker slot, so he is just looking to be the deck's blocker that also just so happens to evo for 1, so he's just a really good card to think about overall, just for those 2 factors. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Lillymon. So this is the BT01 version of Lillymon, and this card is still just a fantastic card to be running just because this card is a level 5 that evos for 2. So most of the time, level 5s evo for 3, so she is another tempo and efficiency card, on top of which she even has a really powerful inheritable ability that synergizes very nicely with the deck, where she is giving the when attacking ability, where you get to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon without the blocker ability. So we don't necessarily care about their blockers because most of the time we're just going to be utilizing the piercing ability anyway to deal security damage as consistently as we possibly can through deleting their Digimon. So if they block with their blockers, then their blocker is still going to get deleted and we'll still get the security check. On top of which, if we just need to try to rest something down, she is a good recursive way of being able to rest down the opponent's Digimon. So she creates like this pseudo lock where if the opponent has a Digimon in play and you have two Digimon both with piercing and a Lillymon underneath one of them, then you'll swing one into the security, then rest their Digimon, then you'll swing with the other one and delete that Digimon and then get the security check that way as well. So she is just a very fantastic card for the deck just because of the ability to rest down the opponent's cards and the fact that she evos for 2. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Argomon. So this is the level 5 version of Argomon, and unfortunately this card is limited to 1, so we can only ever run 1 copy as of the recording of this video. But regardless, this is still just an absolutely insane card to be using for the deck just because he has the nice Digisorption 3 ability. So by resting one of your other Digimon or just one Digimon on your field, it could even be himself, then he could basically reduce his evolution cost by 3, so he basically evos for 0. So that's just really tempo efficient to try to get up into our higher stages as fast as we possibly can. And then on top of which, he even has this nice inheritable ability of when attacking, we get to play 1 level 3 green Digimon from our hand suspended for free. So this is just a really good card just because, again, evoing for 0 is just absolutely insane. On top of which, being able to play our level 3s is also really good, considering we have Lillymon that's going to be adding herself back to our hand, potentially, and we also have Tentamon, which has a very nice on-play ability. Even at worst, just being able to play a Terriermon or a palmon, it's still just good because it's still just a body on board and you'll still get some value out of the card no matter what it is. So Argomon overall is just an absolutely insane card and we still should be running at least 1 copy when we can. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 3 copies of megakabuterimon. So this is the megakabuterimon from the starter deck, and this is another really insane card to be playing with this style of deck because the whole objective is to try to attack into the opponent's Digimon and delete them for a whole bunch of benefits, and there is no better card in the game to gain any sort of benefit with than this Kabuterimon because he has this nice inheritable ability where during your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon and survives the battle, then you get to trash the top card of the opponent's security. So not only if we're playing a whole bunch of piercers will we get the piercing security check, but we'll also get the ability to just delete one of the opponent's security and they won't get to activate the security ability if that card has one when it's checked off of Megakabuterimon's inheritable. So this is just a very fantastic card to be running for the deck just because of that ability alone. It is a little bit unfortunate that he evos for 3, but 3 is about average for your level 5 in terms of like evolution cost to level. So it's not like we really feel that bad about doing it because that's just, you know, a very normal stat to be utilizing. Next, onto the megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of BanchoStingmon. So this is a really good mega to be playing around with in the deck, but this could really be anything you feel like you want to be utilizing. I just feel like for what the deck is trying to do, BanchoStingmon is still just absolutely fantastic, just because he natively has the piercing ability, and that's kind of like the whole goal of the deck, is to just sit on megas with piercing to be as obnoxious as you possibly can, making sure that you're always going to try to delete the opponent's Digimon by attacking into them and deal security damage at the same time. So BanchoStingmon is really good for that already, on top of which he even has a really nice when attacking ability, where if he's attacking an opponent's Digimon that has 12,000 or more DP, then this Digimon gains plus 7,000 DP and security attack plus 2 until the end of the turn. So this is just really good just because even though he does have naturally lower DP, it's not like we don't have ways of DP boosting him, on top of which he could potentially DP boost himself and deal extra damage with the piercing ability. So he is just another really good Digimon to be utilizing to try to hard counter a lot of the Digimon that we might not be able to deal with normally. And then as far as the last mega of the deck, I am going to be running 4 copies of HerculesKabuterimon. So this is the new HerculesKabuterimon from the starter deck, and this card is absolutely fantastic just because he has some slightly higher DP compared to a lot of other megas in the game. He does Evo for 4, which is a little bit unfortunate, where BanchoSting Evos for 3, and generally you want to have a lower Evo cost to be able to utilize your cards that much more efficiently with, but we don't necessarily care about that just because of how powerful HerculesKabuterimon is and how we want to be utilizing the card. So first, he does have the piercing ability himself, so he's at least going to be able to try to attack into the opponent's Digimon, and then when their Digimon's deleted, again, just perform a security check. So that's already looking to be pretty strong, but what makes the card absolutely insane is the fact that he has the main ability of Digiburst 2, where you get to trash 2 of your Digivolution sources to trigger the following ability, and the ability you're getting is the ability to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon. So this is really good because you don't necessarily have to spam this all at once, getting rid of all of his evolution sources, so you could take your time and basically just Digiburst once after moving him out of raising to just swing into the opponent's Digimon that you just rested, and then get the piercing check on top of any other benefits that you got for attacking their Digimon, because he could still have some inheritables left over. So he's just really good for that alone. So that's just what makes him really good, is the fact that he has piercing and he has the ability to suspend the opponent's Digimon, so that way you could attack into it all in the same turn. So the one important thing that you have to understand with HerculesKabuterimon is that we're entering a really high-powered meta, so in order to be kind of competitive, you have to kind of learn how to build your Digimon in the raising and when to move him out of raising. So HerculesKabuterimon is an absolutely fantastic card to just keep in raising because of his Digiburst ability. You could just use this after you move them out of raising, and that's what makes the card really, really powerful. So that way you're not tied and locked to a when Digivolving ability, so that way building it in raising just feels bad because you won't get that ability off. Then when you feel like you need to move him out, you move him out to use his ability and start aggressing that way. So the important thing is the fact that he does Evo for 4, so just sitting with a Kabuterimon on the field after you started at 3 memory feels really bad, because that's just giving the opponent an opportunity to respond, and if they do have a response, then that again just feels really bad because you could have prevented that by building him up in the raising if possible. So he is just a really good card, but he does require a little bit of skill and knowledge on how to utilize the card as effectively as you possibly could. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Hidden Potential Discovered. So Hidden Potential Discovered is still just an absolutely insane card, even though, like Argomon, it did get limited to 1 as of the recording of this video. So we have to keep that in mind that we're only allowed to play 1 copy, but it just means that the opponent can't necessarily play around the 1 copy, and this can definitely help swing games and take the opponent by surprise because of how good this card is. So what this card is doing is it has the main ability where the next time one of your green Digimon Digivolves, you get to suspend one of your Digimon to reduce the memory cost of the Digivolution by 5. So basically what we're trying to utilize this card for is just sit with 2 Digimon on the field, one of them presumably an ultimate, so that way we could rest the other Digimon and Digivolve into our Mega for basically free, and again, that surprise factor can definitely help swing games in your favor and even help close out games, because it might not have been something the opponent would be anticipating, and as a one-of in the deck, they can't necessarily play around it because, you know, it's a one-of. They're not going to, like, say, oh, HPD just wins the game, I can't play around it, because they might not have it. So that just makes the card really, really good, on top of which it also has the nice security ability of being able to add this card to your hand, so whether you naturally draw it in your deck or it's checked in your security, it's going to be a really good card to see when you see it. And then as far as the only other option in the deck, I am going to be running 3 copies of Needle Spray. So this could be Flower Cannon if you really felt like it, or it could be some other spicy options that you feel like you want to be utilizing. I just feel like for what the deck is doing, Needle Spray is definitely the easiest card to be utilizing, just because it has a play cost of 2, and it has the powerful ability where you get to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon down. So again, the whole objective of the deck is piercing, and you want to have your opponent's Digimon in rest, so that way you could use your Digimon to swing into theirs and delete it that way. So Needle Spray is just absolutely fantastic for doing that job, and it has the nice security ability where you get to activate its main ability to rest one of the opponent's Digimon down. Then you get to add this card into your hand, so that way you could then reuse the card later when you feel like the opportunity is best. So Needle Spray is, again, just a really good card, but it could be something like a Flower Cannon or something else, all depending on what you feel like you want to be running. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only tamer of the deck, and that is going to be 3 copies of Ken. So Ken is going to be the deck's dedicated memory fixing tamer, so if our memory is ever less than 3, he'll just always hard set it to 3, and that's just really good because it makes our plays that much more efficient. So if we just have an ultimate and we need to go into our mega, then we just use that 3 to go into BanchoSting, and this is kind of why we want some memory manipulation, so that way we could get to 4 to do the same type of play with HerculesKabuterimon. But we don't necessarily feel that bad about just having a Ken digivolving into Herc, putting them at 1, and then they're forced to respond with potentially 1 memory. So Ken is still just really good just for that aspect alone. And then on top of which, he even has another ability where during your turn, when one of your green or blue Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon by battle and survives, then you get to suspend this tamer to gain 1 memory. So not only is he a memory fixing tamer, but he also could manipulate the memory himself by allowing us to potentially gain that 1 memory, thus making HerculesKabuterimon that much more efficient to run with Ken on the field. So he's just a really good tamer to be thinking about, but this could really be any other tamer you feel like you want to run. I would just highly suggest that whatever other tamer you run, it's going to be a memory fixing tamer, just because memory fixing tamers are going to be super important and super valuable in this current meta and just end the game as a whole. And then, as I keep mentioning, green just has so many other cards that you could think about playing that it is a little bit on the daunting side, just because a lot of their cards are all super good, and sometimes you want to run one over the other. So it really just requires you to test what you feel like is best for your version of the deck. But here are some cards that I decided to highlight that I think are really good and noteworthy for really any green deck you feel like you want to make. So you could think about running Palmon. So this Palmon is doing something very similar to Lillymon, where it's interacting with the Digiburst mechanic, except instead of adding itself to your hand, it's giving jamming, which is really good because if you're playing around with piercing, ensuring that your security checks are going to be as safe as they possibly can is always a really good thing to think about. And then you have Kabuterimon. So Kabuterimon is fulfilling a very similar slot in a very similar role to Stingmon, where the cards are kind of interchangeable. It just depends on what you prefer. If you prefer the DP boost off of Kabuterimon, or if you prefer the memory gain off of Stingmon, it really doesn't matter because they have the exact same stats, and they're really just used as an efficiency tool. It just, again, all depends on your personal preference on whether you prefer DP or memory. Then you also could be thinking about playing Lillymon. So I personally like Lillymon over Lillymon, but again, all depending on the type of deck that you're going to be building. Lillymon is absolutely insane because she naturally has the Digiburst ability herself, and her Digiburst ability is the same as HerculesKabuterimon's, where you get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down. So the whole intended use of the card is build up a Lillymon in Raising, move Lillymon out, use her Digiburst ability to rest the opponent's Digimon, then with hopefully a memory fixing tamer on the field, go into your mega and then swing into the opponent's Digimon that you just rested with Lillymon. So that's kind of the whole intended purpose of how Lillymon wants to be played, and Lillymon even has a nice inheritable ability of when attacking, if you have a tamer in play, then you get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon. So she's fulfilling almost the exact same type of role as Lillymon. It's just the Digiburst ability makes her a little bit more standout, but again, I just prefer the Evo for 2 over Evo for 3 if the inheritable is really all I'm looking at and all I want to be using 9 out of 10 times. But again, it all just depends on what you want to gain out of the card. Then you could still think about running Terriermon and the Digisorption cards just because it's still good, it's still tempo efficient, and we even have some level 7s to utilize Terriermon with, so we could just Digivolve all the way up into Terriermon as efficiently as we possibly can, sit on Terriermon for like a turn, and then hopefully build up Digisorption abilities with his ability to rest the opponent's Digimon down, then end up going into one of our level 7s to just act as some good cleanup. Then if you just want another really decent Mega to be playing around with on a budget, you could be thinking about playing Megakabuterimon just because him stunlocking something and gaining security tech plus for the opponent's rested Digimon is still really, really good. Then you could also think about playing Nidhoggmon just because Nidhoggmon is absolutely insane. He is basically Green's board removal, and him having naturally higher stats just makes him a really powerful card to be playing around with. And Green having the ability to basically go from Egg to Mega is super fast and super efficient, so you could just actually, with enough memory, just go all the way up into Nidhoggmon and take the opponent by surprise, where you could just wipe their whole board out of nowhere. So that's what makes Nidhoggmon really good, on top of which he also is playing around with the Digiburst mechanic. Then if you want to go harder into Digiburst, you could also think about running BanchoStingmon just because he has the Digiburst 2 ability of gaining security tech +1, so you could pair it up with Palmon and Lillymon to just gain some additional benefits. Obviously, the Palmon giving jamming just makes him swing for 3 security checks with jamming, so that way he's going to be as safe as he possibly can, and this is like the core combo to the one-punch strategy with BanchoStingmon, but again, on a budget that's not necessarily feasible, but if you want, you could take the deck in that direction as well. Then, if you really wanted to, you could also add in the level 7s. Both of the Chaosmons are absolutely insane. They're both doing some very similar things, and they're both powerful in their own right. For this style of deck, I definitely would prefer Chaosmon over Valdararm, just because Chaosmon naturally will have piercing, and he gets an extra attack in. So you could do some really interesting things with BanchoSting, where you could swing into their big Digimon, gain all of the benefits, then Digivolve into Chaosmon, and the benefits retain. So Chaosmon definitely has a little bit of higher synergy with the deck, but Valdararm is still just another really fantastic card. And then probably the best other tamer that you could think about running is going to be Mimi, just because her ability to just get basically another raising phase as long as you have a level 5 or higher green Digimon in play is just absolutely insane, because the Digimon that hatches from the raising area will not have, like, in quotation marks, summoning sickness, so it could attack the second you bring her out, so it just allows you to make more powerful and aggressive plays that much faster. So, as I mentioned, this is just a really good starting place if you're just picking up 2 of the starter decks, and green is such a powerful color that you could really take the deck in any direction you feel like, and no answer is better than the other. They're all doing very powerful things almost equally, so I definitely think that green is a really versatile color, but I do think green is definitely one of the harder colors to play because it requires a different type of analysis than a lot of the other colors, just because of its level of removal and its combo potential and combo plays. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are different ways that you could support me in the channel. So one of those ways is I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so whenever you use that affiliate link to buy cards off of tcgplayer.com, then some of the money will go to supporting me in the channel, and on top of which I also do stream over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so following and subbing is a good way to support me over on that platform as well. And on top of that, I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so whenever you buy one of my designs through them, then some of that money will also help go to supporting me in the channel. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.